navigating us through the Allotment Intelligent Management System today, or as we affectionately call it, AIMS. I want to thank you for taking time. We anticipate this will take somewhere between 45 and 60 minutes. It may go faster, it may go a little bit slower, but I anticipate 45 minutes at a minimum. We will have more than 100 participants on this webinar. We are represented with all of the national distributors. We have many publishers, both large and small. We have wholesalers on this call, and we have retailers on this call. So it's really got a good cross-section of attendees, and we look forward to the feedback from what we show you this afternoon. Today our goal is to really illustrate from a systemic process, how we can positively impact the newsstand sales. The profitability, obviously is affected by the recent or continued decline in units. And with us constantly looking at the data, we see many, many, many opportunities that we need to begin taking advantage of as an industry. Using the current sales data and today's technology, further that technology and developing tools that are scalable on today's technology is really key. So we're going to be able to cover market changes. We're going to address and speak about items like the recent Merck retail changes and the dealers that all went from Merck retail to other wholesalers. We're going to talk about what can be tracked and develop your distribution for recent retail service changes that are going to be taking place, all through our MagNet Unique ID system. So there's going to be many things that we talk about. We're going to cover this. We're also recording this, and we'll end up posting it to our website so you can go back and review it at a later date. Unfortunately, because of the number of people, we're going to have to hold the questions until after the webinar is over, and we ask you to either email or call Josh or myself with any questions or any inquiries you might have about it. So with that, I'm really going to turn it over to Josh and let Josh walk you through AIMS and the process that we've developed here over the last year, and we here at MagNet actually use on a daily basis and implement distribution changes through the wholesaler system. So Josh, it's up to you, man. Thanks, Ray, and good afternoon to everybody. I'm actually pretty excited about this webinar for a couple of different reasons. Number one is, for the people who know me, you know that I'm passionate about this regardless. And for another reason, which is I see several new names that I don't recognize, which actually is very exciting because it helps me understand that there is interest out there in maybe enhancing, changing the way that we manage distribution work as an industry. And so part of the idea with the webinar here today is just to kind of give some exposure to the the idea that maybe there are new ways that we can consider how we manage distribution work. The actual data itself, as all of you know, MagNet started as a technology firm, so we have a lot of data, a lot of systemic abilities, a lot of reporting and analytics, and we really sit with all of this information and try to come up with new ways of using it to help this industry become more sustainable for the future. And as Ray was saying, one of the things that we've been trying to do is figure out a way to create a greater efficiency in the distribution and distribution management side of the business, which really encompasses the kind of the marrying of the work that's done on the supply side between distributors and publishers with the logistics and delivery and merchandising side of the business, which happens with the wholesalers and with the retailers. And MagNet sits in a very unique position in between those members of the channel. And so we were looking at all of our data and trying to come up with a way to help bridge the two sides of the business in such a way that we create some efficiencies and create new ways to consider how we manage the data, and at the same time recognize that the end goal is to make us more efficient and more profitable so that, like I said, we can become more sustainable as an industry. So that's kind of some of the background for what we're going to discuss today. The main tool that we're going to use and discuss today is what MagNet calls the
Intelligence Management System, or as we call it, AIMS. AIMS was developed for us to have a central location for the creation of allotments for any title for any wholesaler around the U.S. and Canada. And we created a system that we are very excited to use during the webinar today, because we really feel like it has the opportunity to help a lot of people within this industry. So just to kind of get started here, what I wanted to do was basically start from the back forward. And the idea here is I want to show you what we're trying to accomplish first, and then I'll show you some of the details regarding how we got there as we move along in the demonstration. You look at the dashboard that we have up right now. The dashboard has a variety of different items kind of floating around. The idea here is that as you're working a title, as you're managing a title or a set of titles, there is a process flow. There are titles that are going to close shortly or in some given amount of time. There are titles and issues that you could be working now but are not complete or are not set to have a print order close shortly. Then there are items that you've previously worked, which is what we call success, and then audit, which is kind of the review of the work that you've done within the system against what has actually been distributed by the wholesaler. And I'm just going to highlight this for just a moment, because one of the things that we do in our industry is we try to set things up, but then we don't do a whole lot of work trying to determine whether or not our work actually was implemented. And we realized that we wanted to create a complete 100% circular system. So as you do work using the AIMS tool and you do submit to the wholesaler and that work is hopefully implemented as you expect, we created a one-click audit so that you can analyze the difference, if any, between the work that you've requested to be implemented and what actually got done. And we'll come back to this in a little bit later in the webinar. I've chosen a title, the Smithsonian, a couple of different slices of it. One is a couple of different wholesalers. I've got the News Group U.S. agencies, and I've got Hudson Atlas. And then I've got another slice which shows the national perspective as well. I'm going to start with the national perspective, because one of the things that we realized during the early creation stage of the system is that to really make an efficient tool that can be used in a centralized fashion, we needed the ability to reach across every wholesaler within the U.S. and Canada and be able to affect national distribution all at one time. We wanted to create something that allows us to gain the efficiencies to handle distribution work in one place, but do it in such a way where we don't have to be spending a lot of time on the Excel and the manual manipulation and a lot of the kind of more difficult and time-consuming, detailed work that we all do now for the folks that are involved with distribution on a day-in, day-out basis. So one of the ideas is that we needed a system that would allow us to do a national view of any given title. So what I'm showing you on the screen right now is I ran a national distribution for the Smithsonian, and I asked it to affect the issue 11, 2013, the November issue of Smithsonian. And what you'll see is that we have all of the wholesalers within the U.S. and Canada represented on the screen. It's not showing you every agency at one time because we can actually page through. I'm showing 20 agencies per page, which of course you can change and move on and look at more wholesalers at one time. Just highlighting a couple of the important things on this screen, the idea would be that you have a set of agencies and a title that you're looking to manage. You give our rules engine a variety of different rules, which are things that you as the representative from the publishing house would like to see happen on your title so that you can manage the title the way you want. And the rules engine will crunch those numbers and give you a proposed new base for every individual dealer. And it's important to remember that the rules engine is evaluating every dealer in the U.S. and Canada one at a time. There is no top-down look. It's all bottoms up, so that you can give individual criteria to individual stores, individual criteria to wholesalers, chains, and so forth and so on. We believe we've covered about everything that a traditional distribution would need to have incorporated into the rules engine, whether that's base codes, freezes, average sale buckets, stock accounts, terminal considerations, promotional activity, custom store lists, volume indicators, seasonality indicators, pocket counts, and I think you get the idea, into the rules engine so that it comes up with an optimal distribution. Here are all the agencies that we have. A couple of things to look at in our results set are that you have a current base, which represents the base as of the issue that you've chosen to work, the current dealer count, base of frozen accounts, and the number of frozen accounts that you have, and a variety of other fields representing the sale and the draw for that title. We also have several other slices of the summary, one by RDC. We have a chain slice. We have a class of trade slice, and my favorite, which is the make order summary. Because when it comes down to it, we're trying to manage a title's distribution from a very detailed perspective, but also at a very, very high level, because we want to be looking at the exceptions. So what we did was we created this make order summary so that any representative from the publisher and the national distributor could look at the results, see what's effectively changing and what's not, and then drill through to those details. So in this example, we have 4,411 dealers that from our distribution work are not to be touched based on the rules that we've put into AIMS, which I'll show you in a moment. 380 dealers that we represented that we would like to increase the allotment. 616 where we're looking to reduce, and then 672 dealers that AIMS is recommending that we remove.
One thing I'd just like to bring up, this is Ray, is that in that dealers not adjusted, if you'll look at the current base versus the current draw, you know, we see this a lot throughout the entire system as we're reviewing titles, checking the system, auditing the processes, you know, where obviously the draw far exceeds the base. And in today's world, you know, efficiencies are becoming more and more important as sales continue to decline, but we want to make sure we're efficient in the right accounts and not just removing potential dealers or potential copies from dealers that will sell. So just key on the fact that you're able to see in this example of the results the variance between the frozen base, the base, and your draw, so that if you were to make changes here, what % of your draw is impacted accordingly. Sorry, Josh.
No, that's fine. So another thing that I wanted to point out is that this is a national distribution that we've run. I'll tell you that it took about 40 seconds, maybe 45, to run this national distribution, and it took about 30 seconds to set up this distribution within the system, which I'll show you as well. So we're talking about incredible, incredible efficiencies that we can create by taking all of the smarts that are required to manage the title, put it into one place, allow the system to do all of the number crunching, and then allow the users to ultimately decide what they'd like to do with it. I'm also going to point out to you is that you can click on any one of these buckets and you can look at any of the detail in store level. So you can click through and look at all of the 380 dealers that the system is recommending or proposing to increase. You can get an incredible amount of details that will help you decide if you approve or don't approve of the results. And then finally, it's still ultimately the system owner is still the user. The system is not going to do anything that you don't approve of. So ultimately, if you look on the right side of the screen, you have a user proposed base. So in this example of the first Martin's supermarket, if you, as the representative, decided you did not want to put 11 copies in this store, you can ultimately come in here and type in any number you want. It's still your system. when you're happy with the results, we have a built-in submission process that goes directly to the wholesalers, including the information that they specifically have requested, one wholesaler at a time, in the format they've requested with the appropriate backup detail that they've requested. That's all sent out from one place at one time using AIMS. I'm going to go back and I'm going to show you on the dashboard a couple of examples of things that you can do within AIMS to help you really focus in on the right opportunities and try to help you build that more perfect distribution model for your title. So I'm going to come in here and I've run another version of Smithsonian, and I'm going to show you what you can do with AIMS if you really start to look into the detail. On the make order summary, I have 395 new dealers that AIMS is recommending to add. Well, how did AIMS come up with that? Let's go back to the rules selection. The system has a built-in proprietary rules engine that we created here, which allows you to customize in incredible detail how you manage your title. There is no one way of doing business. There is not just one set of rules. The system allows you to create custom rules for each title at each agency. In this case, I've got two sets of groups that I have pre-created, one for the TNG agencies and one for Hudson Atlas, because the composition of dealers and the goals for this magazine may be a little bit different at each set of agencies, so the system allows you to and gives you that flexibility to customize. I'm going to move and show you a little bit of some of the rules regarding new dealers that the system is prospecting for. We have current dealer rules, and I'm going to skip right into new dealer rules because it's very interesting. The system allows you to create up to 3 competitive titles upon which you can base your review so that you can come up with new dealer opportunities. I've used Discover and National Geographic as my examples, but since we collect 99% of the U.S. market O&R records and 100% of the Canadian records, we've pretty much got every magazine covered as far as potential competitive titles.
Also, I mean, we've just used Smithsonian as an example, and the competitive titles that we're using here are just titles that we came up with. We've not consulted with the publisher or the national distributor. We're simply using this as an example to illustrate the flexibility, and as Josh keeps referring to, the control that the user has in setting up the distribution.
So what you'll see is that from the 2 competitors that I've set up, I've given it custom criteria so that the system can determine which dealers are selling our competitive titles, and our title, the Smithsonian, is not on distribution. I also want to highlight that we capture the authorized list from about every wholesaler around the U.S. and Canada so that we can quickly filter to dealers where the Smithsonian or any title that you're reviewing are authorized, and yet your competitive set is doing very well. You'll also notice here that I've set it up so that either one or the other competitor has an average sale of at least 3 copies to be considered a dealer to prospect. I'm going to very quickly change this to say "and," in the sense that both competitors have to satisfy my criteria for it to be considered a dealer that I want to add to my distribution. So I made one quick change, and I'm going to reprocess this distribution, and the system and the rules engine are effectively going to crunch from the bottom up every single store and come up with a brand new allotment for every store every single time you reprocess, which is actually a very powerful feature of the system because it allows you to really tinker, toy, and dedicate more of your time to analyzing what makes the most sense for this title, because the system does a lot of the heavy lifting for you. You'll see that we have a result, and I'll have you know, and I didn't really say it at the beginning, but we're running this live. There's not a demo server or a test server. This is the exact performance that you would see if you or MagNet were using this system on your behalf. So we can click to see the results, and what we'll see if we move back to the Make Order Summary tab is that instead of 395 dealers, we now have 113 because we've said show me only those dealers where there's at least 2 competitive titles that are selling an average of 3 copies. And we can go through and we can review every one of these dealers. You'll also notice that there's a couple of fields that are on display initially, but there are a lot of other fields that would be of interest depending on what you're doing. So we've built in a lot of different ways for you to look at the data so that you can come up with what makes the most sense for you. So if I wanted to look at what the average sale was for each of my competitors, I can come in here and I can very, very quickly add the average sale for each one of my competitive titles so that I can ensure that these are really dealers that I really want to add. If I don't like some of them, I can very quickly go in here, highlight a bunch of dealers, and then make a change to the distribution in about 10 seconds, because I can come in here, highlight some dealers, and say, you know what, I don't want them, just copy the base, do something else with them than what Ames recommends, because ultimately it still is your system, and as we keep on saying, you have total control. So I want to make sure that people understand here the idea, that, and the reason I'm showing this part of the system, because there's so much to show and crunch into 30 minutes, is the flexibility and the speed that you have with making changes and managing your titles. The throughput has now been increased 100-fold when you use a system like this, because part of the idea here is efficiency so we can lead to profitability. So on the efficiency side, I think you have an idea of what we're discussing. I'm going to hop over to talk about the profitability side in just a moment.
One thing, Josh, on the results page, you'll go back to the results summaries. One thing I want to just bring to your attention is that in each one of these results summary, this one is the make order summary, up there in the top left-hand corner, you'll see it says View Results File. Everything in Ames, all of these files, all the summaries can be downloaded to Excel, and you can save those to your hard drive so that you can go in and look at those if you feel more comfortable in Excel on your hard drive versus, always having to be connected to the internet to see it live through the system. So just another convenience of the entire system. And when you export it, you'll see that all the tabs, you get all of the summaries as well as all of the store detail shows up in one of the tabs. So everything that you've worked on the back end through Ames suddenly becomes an Excel spreadsheet for you to do whatever you want with. Sorry, Josh.
No problem. So I'm going to go back and talk about the crux of the system a little bit, because the whole idea, like we've been talking about, is trying to optimize your distribution, optimizing the dealers and the quantity of copies that are going into stores so that you can be as profitable as possible and obviously be more sustainable. So on the rules engine for existing dealers, I want to highlight a couple things. I'm going to scroll down here, and what you'll see is that there are a variety of rules that the user can customize for each title, for each agency, based on the goals for that publisher. And in this case, I'm going to highlight a few items. You'll see that we have efficiency ranges so that you can regulate dealers based on their size and their average sale and their sales potential. So lower selling dealers are generally regulated at a lower efficiency, and your higher dealers, the higher volume dealers, are generally regulated at a higher efficiency. But this is a way for you to manage at a very detailed level and make changes very quickly, the average sale buckets, let's call it. I also want to highlight that the system right now, from a sales perspective, can operate based on 2 items: sales based on O&R records, and Ames is prepped and ready to use POS records if and when that becomes part of the industry practice. You can drop an issue from your average sale calculation, drop 1, drop 2, all, or drop the high, drop the low, all customized by the user. You'll notice that some of the rules are in dark gray. That means they are inactive. The system will skip over those rules unless you activate the rule, in which case the system would use that. You'll also notice that there are tooltips spread out through the system to help you understand what the functionality is in each part of Ames. I'm also going to highlight a few items down here because it's very, very important to understand that Ames will use pocket counts as well as promotions to come up with the optimal spread of your title across all the dealers that you choose to distribute to. I'm going to highlight a couple of things in the promotion. I've got a promotion that I created a little bit before we started the demonstration. And what we really wanted to highlight is the idea that promotions come in all shapes and sizes, and there's a tremendous amount of work in the industry associated with managing promotions that using AIMS, you really can become more efficient, because AIMS will suck in your either store list or chain set. AIMS will automatically apply the promotion that you're doing into the distribution, and it will pull it off when that promotion is over. So you have the ability to come into AIMS and say, I'm going to be promoting at Target, and as you start typing, you'll notice that the box begins to autofill. And if I say I'm going to be promoting in Target stores, the US, that's all fine and dandy, and you tell it the title that you're going to be working with, Smithsonian, and you tell it, I'm going to be promoting on issue 11 or issue 10 or however many issues you choose that you know you're going to be promoting for on this promotion. You come in and you
go back down to the bottom there, Josh. Just key on the fact we've got the covers for each of the issues that we have throughout the system. So if you're looking at sales and as you're creating your rules, you're wondering, oh my gracious, how did that one cover do or that one issue do in sales? And the sales aren't on this particular grid, but on your issues that you select to calculate your average sale to be used in your distribution also includes draw, sale, and the cover throughout the system. And when you hover your cursor over the cover, it brings it up to a size that you can obviously see. Yep.
So we're gonna select an issue, and we're basically going to tell AIMS that we're going to be promoting for issue 11 for Smithsonian Magazine, and we're going to be promoting at Target stores or any set of stores you want. You can also upload a custom store list, and when you upload a custom store list like I did, it'll just add promotional copies to the stores that you specifically select, and that's a very, very important thing to mention, because there's a lot of flexibility built into that. So as the folks from the marketing and the distribution team are working with all of their Excel files, you can just take your list of stores, upload them into AIMS, and AIMS will know exactly what to do with them when the time comes. So if I wanted to add 5 copies per store, I can just type in 5, and AIMS will automatically, when I run the distribution for issue 11, any Target stores, it will automatically add 5 copies per store into the results. Going to move just a little bit back to the main screen, because I want to just show you what ends up happening when the distribution is run. The results are sent out to wholesale, and you have a result that we can look at. So I'm gonna pull up an example here of a title that has already gone out and already has O&R associated with it. And we're going to let's just use Moshi Monsters. How about that? When I click on this Audit tab within AIMS, what I get is I get a list of every agency that I used in my distribution, and it very quickly compares what I, as the user, proposed or recommended to the wholesaler versus what the wholesaler actually put out, and the variance between those two numbers, if any, with a variety of different summaries. So I can very quickly audit and then correct, if necessary, any discrepancies between what I asked for and what actually happened. Now, if you look at the Audit Results Summary tab, you can very, very quickly see what was applied, and that's applied as I requested, number of stores and copies that were over-allotted, under-allotted, and then, as important, dealers that were dropped that I did not request, as well as dealers that were added that I did not request. And as Ray showed earlier, anything can be exported to Excel anytime you want. We think this is a very, very powerful piece of the system, because it allows people to start being more proactive with how they manage their distributions, and it allows them the flexibility to pick and choose how it manages. That's the crux of the system and how everything works, I think you get an idea of the flexibility, the attention to efficiency, and the attention to centralized management, as well as the idea that profitability can be attained by being very careful and being very detailed in the work. And you can do that efficiently using AIMS because of the rules engine, because of the fact that a lot of the work is crunched for you so that you can analyze the results and come up with the proper distribution for your title, for your agency that you're working.
Yeah, and the other thing is that the system has been developed to be used as a sort of a team event. You know, if a national distributor or a publisher were to be using the system, you can go back here to the dashboard, and one of the things that I wanted to point out to you is that we have this message board or chalkboard on this side over here to the right, and you'll see system notes, and you can control that to work with the people on your staff, to work with the people in the field, to put notes in here, to use it as basically your assignment board, and that will rotate throughout depending on the size of that message board. Also, the dashboard includes, as Josh initially talked about, is all of the new issues that might be coming up, that you can establish a schedule of issues that will be closing and timelines and so forth, that you have to get a assignment in or a distribution done in order to meet a print order close date. The success rate, everything you need is here. It has the icons and allows you to manage it from one central location. Whether you have multiple people using it or not, you can be in control of and manage the process to keep those in the field or wherever they might be working on this, to hold them accountable to what is being done or should be done and what they've been successful at or what they have failed at. So it's a real management tool. The other thing is that while this is being used to do distributions from the bottom up, it can also be used as a modeling tool. I know a lot of publishers will begin to look at their print orders and their allotments and so forth and say, well, what if? You know, if my efficiency is suffering, I want to cut 10% out of my draw. What happens when I cut that 10%? What dealers do I lose? What's the possible impact of my sale? And using AIMS as a modeling tool can allow you to establish the rules, put the efficiencies in for the buckets that you know are impacting your business, and in a few moments, click process and be able to look at the recaps and understand how that's going to impact your distribution.
And then when you've made the decision on what dealers you want to be in and in the right quantities, the system has built-in submission to wholesale so that you can very, very quickly send this out to the people that need to see it very, very quickly in the format that they need. I also wanted to highlight that a lot of things are happening in this business very, very quickly. There's a lot of transitions that are occurring. For those of you who are familiar with MagNet as a company, you're familiar with the unique ID which we create and manage here at MagNet. The unique ID keeps track of a store as it moves between different wholesalers and even within the same wholesaler from different customer numbers. So as the example would be one non-SBT customer number to an SBT customer number. That is all managed at MagNet through one unique ID so that we can have a consistent sales history throughout and used within the system. And then one of the things that we also do with the unique ID is we see into the future based on the transitions that we know are occurring, and then AIMS automatically applies copies to the new wholesaler based on that point in time. The examples that are occurring today are Mercury transitions, CVS, and Rite Aid. So AIMS will know that Ames will know that Rite Aid will transition at the end of August, that may be the day, and beginning September 1st, all copies for Rite Aid will move to the new appropriate servicing wholesaler. If you work a distribution that is on sale before that date, it will know as well, and keep the copies under the existing current servicing wholesaler. So again, just trying to take away some of the manual headaches that we're all accustomed to so we can really focus on driving sales and really spending time optimizing the distribution for our titles.
And the other thing in that vein also that can be impacted are BiPAD changes. If a title changes national distributors and it goes from one to the other and there's a BiPAD change involved, the system will also allow for that change so that when you go from BiPAD A to BiPAD B, we can combine the data at the dealer level so you can look at the O&R issue to issue to understand, did I keep my distribution intact? Did I lose any dealers in the transition? Were my draws maintained? Did stores get fewer copies than they should have? Did they get more copies than they should have? So basically, you want to make sure that you at least maintain the integrity of the previous distribution as you move to the new BiPAD under the new national distributor. So this gives you all the tools and the ability to track that process.
So just to kind of summarize, I think you have an idea of what the system does and why we're happy to share it. I'll also tell you that we're currently using the system live in production and have been for maybe a year or so, and we use it in a variety of different ways for the clients that we work with. So I can tell you it's tested and true and very valuable to help you drive your business.
So I think that, you know, we're actually about right on schedule. We wanted to keep this somewhere around 45 minutes, and we're sitting at about 40 minutes as we speak right now. So, Josh, I appreciate your efficiency in the process of explaining. I would ask that anybody on the call, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to either myself or Josh. If you don't have our information, you can go to our website at www.magnetdata.net, and all of that information is there. I think most of the people on this call have our emails and our phone numbers and maybe know our firstborn as well. So I'm sure you can get in touch with us. But again, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy day to review this. As I indicated early, we have recorded this. We will be posting it to our website should you want to review it again or refer somebody to view this. It will be available on our website probably by the beginning of the week. So with that said, we are going to sign off. This is Ray. And
this is Josh.
And we thank you and good